I'm Patrick Leusch, Managing Director of the Global Media Forum, which is the yearly conference organized by Deutsche Welle, the neighbor of UN here and a cooperation partner. We are cooperating with the Global Festival of Ideas here over the 3 days with these short talks that we called 7 minutes for discussion. We had a long discussion about the title. We named it 7 minutes for debate, for dialogue, and for discussion. So what we'll do here is we will talk with people a little bit in a disruptive manner. We don't want to be entirely committed to everything that is said here, that everything is nice, that everything is fine. We want to see the hidden points, the dark side of the moon a little bit. And I'm very happy to elaborate the first issue, the first really important issue on my right hand with Nick Nuttall, who is the spokesperson, the head of communication with UNFCCC, who are here nearby in the white building. And on the other side, I'm with Uchita de Zoysa, who is Sustainable Development Advisor with the Ministry of Sustainable Development and Wildlife in Sri Lanka. The topic that we have here is simply cooperation, sustainability, and growth. I would put it that way. Where are the limits of international cooperation, particularly when we look at the implementation of the SDGs? So from the perspective of Sri Lanka, who is definitely a country which is also affected, let's say, by climate change, for instance, in what international setting Sri Lanka is operating and gets its support for its goals from the international community?
First of all, the SDGs do not have a financing mechanism for governments to implement. This is the biggest problem that we are having. In Sri Lanka, what we are looking at is that every time there is an international process, we sign on to it. 500 plus multilateral environmental agreements in the world. What has happened? 20 years, in 1992, the Earth Summit pledged Agenda 21, and everybody signed on. Now it's the same, and countries are left to do that.
What is Sri Lanka itself doing in that international framework?
Sri Lanka is committed to the climate change process. And Sri Lanka's problem is that it needs to grow economically from a developing country. But then when the floods come, it takes the investments away and poverty increases more. So the international community must have greater impact on financing.
When we look at the climate process, which is on since 2015, and there is an agreement that 193 countries have signed. When you look at it and you see how big players are keeping away from international frameworks, I'm referring to the US, but I'm referring to others. So what chance to get that global goal done if there is a lack of international cooperation or this stepping away from frameworks is growing?
Well, I mean, that may be your perspective. I don't think it's our perspective. I think we're actually seeing a major momentum by all economies towards embracing the Paris Climate Change Agreement and the Sustainable Development Goals. And I mean, you only have to look at the speech of the Premier of China in Davos at the World Economic Forum just last month, basically, affirming that China wants to move in this direction. Look at the European Union, look at so many other countries. We're not starting from ground zero.
Sorry, Nick, to interrupt, but this is words.
We're not starting from ground zero. When you say it's words, okay, you want to talk about finance. There is a reality check there, that's absolutely clear. There's probably about $1 trillion right now going into broadly the green space, into sustainable development goals and into climate action. There is a global economy of, say, $110 trillion. And so we need to actually bridge that gap. Investment is going to happen anyway. It's going to happen in the developing countries in particular. It's going to happen in the developed countries. How do we green that? We need about $5 to $7 trillion a year. But I reject your claim that somehow the world is not moving. The world is moving, but it needs to go faster.
My question was if the world is moving together, but I appreciate that you are turning the Chinese now the good guys in the climate process. So are you agreeing that there is enough investment that we are going on a good track? What Nick is proposing here?
I think there's a great bubble created from the SDGs 2015 and 3 months down the line to the Paris Agreement. But it does not mean that the bubble is being supported by the global financing mechanism. We were told that the 2030 agenda is a transformatory agenda. If it is a transformatory agenda, you have to track back and see what went wrong in the Agenda 21 in 1992. It went wrong because there was no political commitment. Why was there no political commitment? There was absolutely no international commitment for financing the Agenda 21. Show us the money. Show where the commitment of the global community is towards before asking countries to commit.
So one thing is the political commitment, the other thing is make it happen, accord finance to it, bring the stakeholders in, bring the business in, and so on. When you have a perspective over the next 2-3 years, what is the main political project you think that you have to work on when you see the political situation that we have at the moment? You're saying the EU is standing strong to it, China is standing strong, others are coming on board, but there are important players that are maybe less on board that we have meant they be 2 years in Paris ago. So where's your political project to keep them on board?
Look, I think what's very different about the world we're in right now is it's not just about national governments. I mean, I think we're seeing incredible commitment now from cities, from business, the private sector, investors all moving. And I think the main challenge that we have is, I think the momentum is there, and I think the momentum will continue. As I said before, it's a question of speed and it's a question of scale. And one of the limiting factors in this is the financial architecture we have on this planet. Now, there are some central banks now starting to take this a bit more seriously. Since the economic crisis of 2008, the Financial Stability Board, led by the Governor of the Bank of England, and I think they're trying to look at how can we reform the financial architecture so the flows go into sustainability. I don't think there's a lack of will right now. Nobody was handcuffed or no gun was put to anybody's head to actually sign the Paris Agreement, and as of today we have 32 countries who have ratified it, and that's in record time. So there is enthusiasm, and we need to actually look at the financial architecture. I think then things will get on track.
Thank you very much. From the perspective of Sri Lanka, when you have a to-do to give to UNFCCC, to the UN as a system, to Nick. So what is the to-do from your perspective that you want to leave here with him?
From the point of Sri Lanka must work on its negative ecological footprint. It must keep it there. The first responsibility is towards ourselves. Secondly, we must look at a global process, and the global process must reciprocate and tell the world that countries like Sri Lanka, Bhutan, and so on must be left and supported to keep an ecological footprint that is negative, and that it must progress, and poverty must be eliminated, eradicated, not just managed to a thin line. And then climate change must be supported, because climate change and poverty goes hand in hand. You can't separate both, and that is what the SDGs are about. These are interlinked systems. You can't separate the goals.
I think that is the new quality of it, that it is comprehensive in a very special way and universal. The second hand. Your to-do for Uchita?
My to-do for Uchita is that we need to translate passion into action. He's doing that, and I think he needs to talk to, in the global south where he's from, there are many new investors emerging, there are many powerful companies emerging. I think we need to engage with the global south in terms of the private sector and the cities and move forward. I think we have a great chance of delivering something special in the next 30 years.
Thank you very much. 7 minutes for discussion. Nick Nuttall, Head of Communication, UNFCCC. He deserves an applause. Thank you very much. And Uchita de Zoysa, Sustainable Development Advisor with the Ministry of Sustainable Development and Wildlife in Sri Lanka. Thank you very much.